So, hello everybody. Welcome to another episode of Chocolate Travels. I'm Joseph with Bean to Bar World, and I'm here with Caroline from Carobeans. Hi, Caroline.
Hi.
Nice to see you. Nice to meet you.
You too.
So, tell us a little bit about yourself. Where are you from, and how did you enter the realm of chocolate making?
Yeah, so my name is Caroline. I live in Minnesota in the United States, where it's just cold right now. Um, I have been like immersed in the pastry and chocolate world since like 2004. I
Okay.
developed a nut allergy and just
Mm,
um really dove into like trying to teach myself how to bake because I couldn't really eat anything from like commercial bakeries or
mm,
much chocolate anymore, and I've always had a sweet tooth. So, I started doing it just as a hobby up until really the pandemic when I started thinking like, because I got laid off and I was like, maybe I could really make a business out of this. Um, and I was still at that point make using like couverture chocolate to
right,
make
right.
bonbons and stuff, and I was so frustrated with trying to trace where the chocolate came from and like
Why
assure
was
my
that, why was that important to you?
I mean, I've that's just always been important to me to use, ethically produced and sourced products. But
Mm,
and I felt like, I was buying bags of like Calabo Calais and they had all these like nice looking graphics and promises on there, but it still didn't really feel
mm,
like it didn't show, the faces of the farmers or anything.
mm, mm,
And then something came out in the news around that time too about, the like slave labor is still being used
mm,
within the
mm,
industry and how a lot of these big brands were like making promises to be like, child labor free by a certain year that was like 5 or 10 years down the road. And I was like, that doesn't even make sense. So
mm, mm.
I just like I was staying up late one night, like reading about ethically sourced chocolate. And I'm like, you know what? I'm just gonna make my own. Like, this
Okay.
doesn't look too hard. It was like midnight and I bought a melanger online, not
Nice.
knowing what I was doing,
Right. So at
which
this
is,
point, you never tried any of the bean to bar things. You just wanted to make your own chocolate.
yeah.
Wow.
It was, I
Nice.
mean, I had tried bean to bar chocolate.
Oh, okay.
Um, I think one of the first like eye-opening moments to me was trying a Maru bar,
Mm,
um, like a Vietnamese cacao bar, and I was just like, I never knew chocolate could taste like this. I
mm.
mean, I grew up eating like the Hershey Special Dark bars. That's what I like. And
Right.
so I was just like, wow, chocolate can taste amazing.
Okay. Okay. So that's sort of how you ended up making your chocolate. You sort of just de delve into it, said, I'm going to do this. Um, and you had a background in the kitchen, so you had some confidence there that, you can figure it out, you can do it.
Yeah.
So before we move forward with that, do you want to define, how would you define bean to bar?
Um, I would define bean to bar as a smaller maker that
Hmm.
sources their own beans and processes them into chocolate.
Okay.
And for me personally, that means buying raw beans and roasting them myself, raw fermented beans,
Right.
and
Right.
being in control of that roasting process also.
Okay. Okay. And so when you started, you bought your melanger. How did you know where to get the beans from? Where were your first beans from? And
I
was that
didn't.
a challenge?
It was.
Yeah.
And I think with chocolate making, it's like, it's just, I mean, as you know, there's not like recipes or, if you want to make a batch of cookies, there's millions of step-by-step recipes online and
Right.
there isn't
Right.
for chocolate. So I just Googled and I think like most makers got my start with Chocolate Alchemy with John
Mm.
Nancy. And that's where my first beans came from.
Okay. Okay. And what would you say, other than the beans, what were some other challenges that maybe you didn't anticipate, something that you really found frustrating when you started making chocolate?
I think, like I said, just not having recipes and really not knowing what I was doing and,
Okay.
reading, okay, you have to roast the beans. Well, how the heck do I roast a
Mm,
cocoa bean? Like, I don't know what a roasting profile is. I don't know what
mm,
end of temperature means. So it was just a lot of like staying up late at night, reading the internet. I bought I think it's the Dandelion Chocolate
mm.
book that has a lot of good help in there. And then it was just a lot of experimenting
Right.
and
Right.
which gets
And that's
expensive.
generally what it comes down to for everybody is you have to tinker with the beans you have, the equipment you have, and figure out what works best for you.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Okay.
I think it was like pure luck that my very first batch turned out really good. And I was like, oh my gosh, this is amazing. And then it was like my second batch didn't. So I was like, okay, that maybe that was just luck.
And what was the problem with the second batch? Was it too bitter? Just didn't like the flavor? What was
It
wrong?
was kind of boring. Like
Okay.
first batch I did was I think it was like a milk chocolate with Bolivian beans and it was
Okay.
just really
Yeah.
good and exciting. And the second batch I was like, it wasn't as
Mm-hmm.
exciting as the first one. So
Mm-hmm. So at this point here, what would you say is your greatest motivation to keep doing what you're doing, making the chocolate, all the different products that you're making? What's
um
keeping you through, keeping you going?
definitely the customers. Like I love doing in-person events and like having
Mm,
people try this chocolate for the first time that maybe haven't tried actual like bean to bar chocolate or craft chocolate. I love like watching the expressions on people's faces when they're like, "Oh wow, this tastes amazing." And like kind of like how my first experience was where I was like, "I didn't know chocolate could taste like this."
right, right.
So just seeing that excitement um, and like showing people that there can be a better option for like ethical chocolate
Hmm.
out there. So yeah, I mean that's my biggest motivation. And
Right.
my kids too. They're like both little chocolate connoisseurs now, which I love. They both love like really dark chocolates or like
Yeah.
complex chocolates. So
Are they able to give you feedback on your batches and let you
yeah,
know how
I
it's going?
mean,
Yeah.
my 5-year-old son just thinks it's all good.
Okay.
My 11-year-old daughter she's very honest with me, so it
Nice.
keeps the ego in check. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Very nice. Yeah, and it's good to know that people, if they're looking for ethically sourced chocolate, it's not just that, not that it's not important, but it's also about the flavor. You get ethically sourced, direct, very transparent, all that. And then on top of that, you also have chocolate that just tastes better than most people are used to, right?
Yeah.
Um, when it came to the tempering, because you said you had a background in pastry, so you must have tempered chocolate before you started making chocolate. Did you find it a challenge to temper chocolate with a less thin, something that was a bit thicker? Did you struggle with that, or was it pretty simple?
Yeah, I remember a couple of batches where I think I had beans that maybe had like a lesser percentage of
Yeah.
cocoa butter in them, and the chocolate was just really thick and hard to work with.
Hmm.
But yeah, I think because I'd been tempering chocolate for so long, it came naturally to me
Right.
to,
Yeah.
work through the process. So, but
Yeah. A
yeah,
lot
it
of
was definitely different. So,
Yeah. A lot of people who don't have any background in chocolate who start making chocolate, tempering is a huge hurdle for them because they
yeah.
have no idea what to do. But even for me, who had a background in chocolatier, when I started working with bean to bar chocolate, I'm like, man, this is thick and this is
Yeah.
not as easy as the couvertures with all that cocoa butter and
Yeah.
lecithin. So extra work there as well.
Yep.
Um, what would you say? Would you say that your chocolate has a style? Now that all these small chocolate makers are making chocolate in their way, it seems like a lot of people have their different styles. So would you say your chocolate has a style? And if so, what is that style?
Um, I mean, one of my defining features of my chocolate is that I'm nut free.
Mm,
And that a lot of my customers are nut free. So, I've also enjoyed finding like alternatives because, people want that crunch sometimes in a bar. So I've
mm,
done
mm,
like popped quinoa or like
mm,
popped brown rice, stuff like that. Um, so I think a lot of people know my brand because of that. But I think my style is just kind of keeping it like innovative, and I love like experimenting and
Right.
kind of combining like science with chocolate, and so trying new flavors that aren't out there. And
Okay.
I mean, I also love just focusing on the bean and keeping it pure and like
Right.
showcasing what that one bean can offer in just like a plain dark chocolate bar. So
Right. But you have that creative side too that you just want to keep playing and experimenting, right? So,
yeah.
yeah. And so is your chocolate, it's obviously nut free. There's no nuts, but is it sort of nut free facility as well? Is there that
Yeah.
extra layer of assurance? Okay. Okay.
Yeah, I have a nut allergy, so like all of my equipment, everything is nut free. So
And is that important for most people with nut allergies that it not only has to not include nuts, but has to be a nut-free facility as well?
yeah, for sure.
Mhm.
Yeah, because I mean, a lot of makers will have nut-free bars, but then they use the same melanger to make like, a
Right,
chocolate peanuts in it or whatever. So you can never really guarantee that something's nut-free if it's shares equipment.
right, right. Okay. And is there a type of customer that you find that tends to gravitate toward your chocolate or bean to bar chocolate in general? Have you thought about that at all?
Yeah.
Notice that?
Yeah, because one of my biggest like philosophies, I guess, is like always be asking where your food comes from.
Mm,
So I think that's a lot of my customer base is people that are curious about where does chocolate come from? Like what's actually going on in the world of chocolate.
mm,
So,
mm.
and I mean, I'm transparent about like every single ingredient I put in my bars too. So I think a lot of my customer base is like people that like food and like asking questions about their food and trying new flavors and
Yeah, yeah.
yeah.
Excellent. Wonderful. Yeah, I find that as well. It's people that tend to not just enjoy the food, but have a lot of questions about where is it from, why is it like this, and all that sort of thing. So very curious people
Yeah.
tend to appreciate bean to bar chocolate. So I imagine you enjoy other chocolate makers as well, like you mentioned earlier. From your point of view, because you also make chocolate as well, what criteria do you use that maybe people in the general public could also use when they're tasting chocolate to figure out, is this a high quality chocolate bar? What do you look for? What do you taste for?
Um, starting with the packaging, like, is it transparent where the beans are from?
Mm.
Like, even if it just says a country, like, that's still like, I'm like, okay, Hershey's could also say,
Lint says countries too, right?
yeah.
So yeah.
So I look for more information than that. Um, for tasting, I feel like I just kind of have an open mind. I'm
Mm,
not, I don't go into it expecting anything, I guess.
mm,
You read and I think it's like the same with red wine. Like I love red wine and but it's like they always have these descriptions of like vanilla and smoke and whatever. And I'm like, I never really get that. I always
mm,
kind of get, what my palate tastes.
right.
So I kind of go into it the same with chocolate without an expectation. So, and I mean, another thing I've learned with chocolate tasting is to like not crunch it up right away. Like, which
Take your time with it.
yeah, let it
Yeah.
melt in your mouth and then you really get more flavors out of it. So,
Okay. So other than they're looking at the packaging, there's more information on the cacao that goes beyond the country. So maybe a region in the country, an actual farm, a co-op. And then there's the flavor. What should, you said there's nothing specific people should expect from the flavor, but you know, how should the flavor be different than a Hershey bar or a Lindt bar? In what way, what else are they looking for in that regards?
I think that the flavor should linger longer. I mean, when you eat a
Mm,
Hershey bar, it's kind of like you get that sweet, milky flavor right away and then it's gone.
mm,
Um, for me, Hershey bars have always left like a metallic kind of aftertaste. So like
okay.
that would be a big red flag. And
Okay.
I don't know why I get that from Hershey bars, but I always have.
Interesting.
But yeah. Um, But yeah, I think one of the biggest things is like how long does the flavor linger in your mouth afterwards? If it's just gone right away, it's
Mm,
not a very
right.
complex chocolate. So
Right. So simplistic versus more layering, more complexity to the flavor
yeah.
there, more
Hmm.
dimension. Um, some people feel in the bean to bar world, whether you're a chocolate maker or a chocolate taster, they feel kind of embarrassed or ashamed to ever admit if they eat anything other than bean to bar. So how do you feel about that? Like, if you went to someone's house and they offered you a Lindor or, whatnot, how do you feel about that?
Yeah, I try to not be pretentious about it. Like as a maker, I will always like educate you on what is bean to bar chocolate, but I mean my kids go trick-or-treating and I let them eat their like Milky Ways and stuff. I mean, that's just the culture we live in. It's really hard to like
Right.
completely get rid of all that. Like, am
Yeah.
I gonna go out and purchase it? No, but
Right.
I'm not gonna shame anyone, so
Right. Right. And I think people, feel a little bit too much pressure. It's like if once they start enjoying craft chocolate, beat the bar chocolate, that they're not allowed to touch anything else, and it's a
yeah.
bit too serious, too much pressure for people
Yeah.
to get into it, and that kind of turns them off sometimes
Yeah,
from
that
craft
makes sense.
bar. Yeah.
Mhm.
What is the range of products that you carry now? So on your Instagram, you're always showing not just your bars, you even show other things as well. So what do you currently carry?
Yeah, so I have like my classic selection of bars. It is the varieties that I always carry. And then I have my limited edition bars that are the ones that are like hand wrapped in paper. And those are kind of always changing with the seasons or whatever I
Mm,
feel
yeah.
inspired by. And then I make a brewing cacao, which is like the whole bean ground up and it's roasted to like a much higher degree than regular like roasting for consuming chocolate.
Mm,
And that one's special because those beans come from where my sister and brother-in-law live in Bolivia.
okay.
And they actually bring me the beans. They're
Oh,
wild from
very nice.
the Amazon. Yeah. So, and they
I
make
love
a
Bolivian cacao. They have some incredible cacao
yeah.
there.
Yeah. And they make a really good brewing cacao. So, and then
Okay.
I also have hot chocolate right now, just with cocoa powder that I got from Meridian Cacao. So it's not
Mm,
really bean to bar, but
right, right.
better than what's
Still a
at the
great
grocery.
product. Yeah.
Yeah.
And so that's interesting. So was your sister already living in Bolivia before you got into this Pinto bar, or was that
Yeah.
any part of the inspiration?
Well, yes, I've always had this like fascination with the Amazon rainforest. I mean, ever
Mm,
since I was like, since I can remember, and had the opportunity to go when I was like 18. Um, and then my sister just ended up falling in love with it there and moved there and then married a Bolivian. And
okay.
I've been back and it's just, I don't know, I've just always felt that connection to the culture and to
Mm,
the plants that grow there. I
very
had always
cool.
wanted to go into like microbiology and like work in the Amazon and so it's like full circle now.
That makes
Like
sense because you have a bird, right? You have a parrot, you like
yeah.
animals, right? Yeah, I've seen that on your social media, so I can understand that too. That was one of my when I was in university, I was headed towards sort of zoology and all that sort of stuff because that would have been
Okay.
a nice dream too. So it's
Yeah.
funny how we both like that and then we both ended up in chocolate
Yeah.
too. That's funny.
It's still connected and
It
yeah.
is. Yeah.
Mhm.
Yeah. A lot of the science behind it, the curiosity. There's a lot of parallels.
Yeah.
Yeah. Wonderful. So you have an array of flavored bars. You
Mhm.
make bonbons as well.
Mhm.
So I think you mentioned a little bit, but how do you tend to come up with these interesting flavor combinations? And because you also worked with couverture, which is a little bit more basic and easier to pair with other flavors, do you find that making chocolates with your interesting flavored bean to bar, is that more challenging for you, or do you find it just as easy?
Yeah. It's for sure more challenging.
Mm.
And for your first question, I feel like most of my ideas, again, come up in like the middle of the night where I'm just like, what if there was a bar that had this? Like most of my ideas are like something I would want to eat. And I'm like,
Right.
this doesn't exist. I really want to eat it. So I'm find a way to
So
make
it comes
it.
from a craving. You're craving something, and
Yeah.
then
Um, but yeah, I remember I tried making bonbons like with one of my first chocolates I made with beans from Tanzania, and they were just like way overpowering for a bonbon.
mm,
So
mm,
I'm like, okay, I'm gonna have to work on this. Like even recently, I made dark chocolate with Camino Verde from Ecuador, and I was planning to dip like orange, dried orange peel in the chocolate. and I tried it and I'm like, this does not taste good at all. Like
No,
they didn't pair
the
at all.
flavors didn't pair. Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Interesting. Yeah. So
Oh,
for people
yeah.
who don't really know too much about bean to bar, the bean to bar, each origin, each bean has a distinct flavor. And it's difficult to pair it with different fruits and nuts and whatever that you're pairing it with because the couverture chocolate just is very basic, right? It's a
Yeah.
very
Dark
simplistic
and
and
like
it's easy to go with anything. And that's probably why they make it, one of the reasons why they make it so basic, right?
yeah.
Um, yeah, very interesting. So we kind of already covered this, but let's hash it out again just because people need to understand this. How do you explain the difference then at your markets between your chocolate bar and the Hershey, the Lindt, the Cadbury bar that people are used to?
I mean, I think just having people taste it, most people have tasted, a Hershey bar or like a Lindt truffle or whatever. Um, I always have people start with like I do a 72% with Vietnamese cacao inspired by Maru. And I always have people start with that because that's my personal favorite.
Mm,
And kind of give them an idea of like notes to look for in it. And just when they realize they can actually taste that, like honey and raisins and
mm.
and people are always like, so there's nothing, there's no cinnamon in this, there's no
Right.
honey in it. No, there's just,
Yeah.
two ingredients. So
Yeah. It's amazing how people, I get the same questions too, is they're like, so there's no oil, like cherry oil you added or something? And it's like, no,
yeah,
no. And people can't wrap their head around that. So
yeah,
it really blows their mind.
yeah.
What would you say is your favorite aspect or task of being a chocolate maker? And what is your least favorite? Other than the
Um,
cleaning, forget the
yeah.
cleaning because nobody likes that.
My favorite is getting to use my like creative side. Like for me,
Mm,
it's such a creative outlet. And especially like even with these, I've started hand wrapping bars in this like handmade paper and like getting
mm.
to pick a paper and like pair it to the origin or pair it to the flavors in the bar has been like really like almost as exciting as making the chocolate.
Interesting.
So yeah, for me, it's all like working art into it and like being creative and like
Mm,
being my own boss is a huge thing. Like no
mm.
one telling me like you have to make this or you have to make it this way. So
Right, right.
that's my favorite. My least favorite is all the, I mean, the financial stuff and just like having
Mm,
to do everything for my
mm,
business, like
mm.
social media and like accounting and just everything. It gets to be a lot. So
Yeah, 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 it does. Especially I find for myself, I find social media a bit overwhelming and exhausting because to do something so simple takes so much time behind the scenes.
yeah,
And
well, and sometimes I feel like I'm not being genuine if I'm like, okay, I need to post on social
mm.
media. Like I don't really feel like it. So then it just
Right, exactly. Yeah, I can see that. I can see that. Um, do you have any ideas for the future that you want to share? Do you have any visions of where you kind of want to see your craft going or your business going?
yeah, I'm really working towards um having wholesale accounts and being able to like
Mm,
ship
mm,
worldwide. And I mean, that's been my biggest setback is finding an affordable commercial space because it's just
yeah.
you're in Canada, right? I don't know
Yes.
if it's similar there, but like
It's pretty expensive.
yeah. And chocolate making is such a like weird niche where it's like I don't necessarily need ovens or even
I
stoves or anything.
know.
So like why am I paying this huge amount for all this equipment that I don't need? So
Yeah.
it's yeah, or I've had commercial kitchens want to charge me per hour for leaving the melanger running, and I'm like, that
Yeah.
would put me out of business.
Exactly.
That's been the hardest thing is trying to figure out how to move forward and like grow my business in that way. Because I
Yeah.
mean, I get so many requests and I'm so tired of turning people down for like
Mm,
whole accounts. So
yeah.
yeah.
It's a good problem to have, but I can definitely understand that, especially you could because you have different types of people coming into the bean to bar world. Some people came from careers where they made up, six figures, a lot of money, and they have a good chunk set aside that they can invest and maybe
Yeah.
buy that commercial space. And then there's some of us who worked in kitchens our whole lives that never
Yeah.
saw that kind of money, right? So it is interesting. And Yeah, there are some places where they've said to me, "Oh yeah, you can leave your melanger there. It's no problem." That's so nice, you know. But when people like us approach these commercial kitchens and whatnot, chocolate is just so weird. They don't, it doesn't fit in any of their rubric
Mhm.
ideas. So puts us in a weird position. And yeah, we're not always, I'm not ready to invest, hundreds of or take loans of hundreds of thousands of dollars and do all that sort of thing. So
Yeah, I've tried to really do this without taking on any debt and
yeah. Yeah, that's tough. But it seems that, in spite of that, you've been doing a whole lot. You've been very creative, and keeping close attention not just to the craft and the ethics, but also, like you said, your packaging. And people seem to love it because you're turning
yeah,
customers down. So you're on
yeah,
the right track for sure, and that's really good
yeah.
to hear. So the realm of bean to bar is still very new for most of the general public. Is there anything specific or general that people within the bean to bar industry need to do more of in order to grow this sector? Is this something that, you know, people in general, like me or you and other makers, should be doing more of to
That's a
grow?
good question. And I'm not sure, I guess. I mean, I've been so impressed with this community, like how supportive it
Mm,
is. And everyone, like I was just at a market this weekend and I got placed directly in front of another bean to bar maker, which in Minnesota there's like literally a handful of us, so it was
right.
weird. So it was, and right away he was like, "I'm not very happy about this," and I was like, "Well, we can support each other. Let's just,
Right.
make the best of it." So we have different products, different
Mm,
styles,
hmm.
like so. I feel like, I mean, just continuing that to be supportive of each other.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
yeah.
Because
So
people shop around. Like there's many bakeries in every
yeah,
town, every city, right? And people have their favorites, but then even if they have their favorites, they still maybe like the cake at this bakery and they go there and there. And,
yeah,
and I think in the bean to bar world too, because there's so much education involved, if you're educating customers and they're appreciating your chocolate, those educated customers will go to the other guy and vice versa. Kind of
yeah,
helps each other out, I think, in a lot of ways.
yeah,
Wonderful. Good. Well, thank you, Caroline. Thank you very
yeah.
much for sharing your story, hearing about everything you do. I wish you a lot of success with everything that you're doing. And just to clarify, how can people connect with you? Where do you currently ship, and how can people purchase your products?
I post most of my stuff on Instagram. That's where I'm most active. I do have my website. People can purchase there. I still can't technically ship because of Minnesota law, but I
Okay.
have a little bit if I like if it's someone I know.
Right. Yeah.
Um, but yeah, it's mostly just purchasing online and local pickup and markets for
And
now.
markets there. Wonderful. Okay. Well, thank you so much, and all the best. We'll talk to you again soon. Download the free Bean to Bar app to connect with makers from around the world, either where you live or places you'll visit. Also, be sure to visit beantobarworld.com for all things fine chocolate, including professional chocolate tastings, chocolate tutoring, online shop filled with bars, tasting tools, and more, the free learning center filled with research, history, science, videos, podcasts, and much more. Sign up for the newsletter to stay in touch, and feel free to donate to grow the free app and free learning center.